Welcome to Down Home Horror, where we keep the hall lights on for you. I'm Amber,
I'm Alex.
and today we are going to talk about comfort movies. We typically like to keep the channel as positive as possible. There's a lot of shit going on in the real world, so we decided to compile a list of our top 5 favorite comfort movies that we turn to when shit is going on. So, to preface this list, again, first of all, this is 5 of probably like a billion for me. Um, I'm actually going to compile an entire list on my Letterboxd, which, if you're interested in that, the link will be in the description. But for now, we're just going to talk about our top 5. Most of these are not my favorite movies, but they're still movies that bring me some sort of comfort that I've seen probably a billion times, but still make for a good snuggle up in bed, eat too much junk food, and watch a movie. So to start with, I have a couple honorable mentions that are actually TV shows. So my first one is Haven, which was a show on Sci-Fi back in the day. Retrospectively, Haven was not that good of a TV show. It would come on every Friday night, right after Friday Night SmackDown, and that's why it's one of my comfort shows because it has like those memories attached to it for me. Because me and my dad would watch Friday Night SmackDown, and then I would make him stay up late to watch the newest episode of Haven. And so the reason why that's such a comfort show, even recognizing that it's not a fantastic show, is because it's just tied to really like fond memories of when I was younger and didn't have to deal with being an adult, which nobody likes. So my second honorable mention is very specific. It is literally the first 2 seasons of The Walking Dead, and that's it. Just the first two.
No, I honestly can get behind that
Yes.
110%. Those are the only good seasons, in
Yes.
my opinion.
I just loved, like, that show reminds me a lot of like inspiration, because the first time I watched it, I was like, you know what? I'm moving to Georgia, and that's exactly what I did years later. So
That's
it's
awesome.
just, I love everything about the first 2 seasons. It was my first time seeing like a zombie series play out, and I love like the character development that they do, the cinematography, the camera shots, like the practical effects, all of it. It's just, it brings me inspiration, so I have comfort in that form. So Walking Dead, first 2 seasons. Once they leave Herschel's farm, I don't care that much. Thanks.
I, as someone that read the comics for a really long time, I agree. That's kind of the end of when I really enjoyed the show as well. I want to say Walking Dead was very influential on cable TV because it was almost treated like an HBO show as far as dark themes and blood and gore went, and it started making it feasible for kind of nighttime TV that
Mm-hmm.
wasn't HBO or Cinemax or Showtime to have that quality of show.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but I feel like I heard that tidbit somewhere, like that we could thank The Walking Dead for bringing that down to a more accessible level, I guess.
Would make sense, I think, too.
My honorable mentions. Okay, my actually before we even get to my honorable mentions, my caveats. When we were talking about, or when I was trying to come up with my list, there were a chunk of them. Like my first thoughts were ones that were on my most influential list. That's because some of the thing about my comfort shows is stuff that I tend to obsess over for a period of time. There's something about the comfort of deep diving and information and just either replaying it or rewatching it a whole bunch. Since I've already talked about most of those, I'm not gonna bring them into this list. We've talked about them. We don't need to talk about them again, right? It's fair. So then when I was making this list, I was trying to think of like, okay, I'm sick in bed, and I had every horror movie in front of me. What would I pick? So this is what I'm considering for my comfort shows, right? That being said, my honorable mentions are just gonna be some repeats real quick. Uh, I talked about American Horror Story and our top 10 most influential, and I need to just reiterate that when I'm going through a bad depression spell, what I do is I put on American Horror Story, and my depression never holds out longer than American Horror Story does. And so I'll watch it until I feel better, and that's usually about season 7 to 9, somewhere in between there. That's about where it can give out. And then I'm like, wow, I'm cured. Thanks, American Horror Story. No, it's just at this point I've watched it enough times. I know the beats. It is a comfort. It's something that
Right.
I'm well aware of, and I can be zoned out for 2 episodes and be fine. Thing number 2, although I don't think it necessarily made my list last time, it's a game we'll play. How many times will Alex mention Silent Hill? I again, it goes under the what can I obsess over for a period of time. When I'm needing comfort, I need something to distract. I need to learn, etc. So like the Gaming Muse has a whole years long series on Silent Hill symbolism. I'll deep dive into that. I'll watch Super Best Friends play through Silent Hill 2. I'll find noob streamers who are watching or playing through Silent Hill games. I have never played a Silent Hill game, but I know a lot about Silent Hill because of it. So those are my honorable mentions, right? They will come up repeatedly, but that's just kind of a general comfort thing. So now actually hitting your list.
So, again, just like my horror influences, these are in no particular order. So, my first one that I have is the Crazies from 2010, which is the remake of George Romero's 1973 Crazies, where the occupants of a small town are affected by something that turns them into bloodthirsty lunatics.
Doesn't sound
Can
like him at
I,
all.
right? Can I tell you why that this movie brings me comfort? No, I really cannot. But there's just something about it. I don't know if it's because I've watched it so many times, but also I just really like that movie. I know that it's very like hit or miss with horror fans as far as remakes go, but I think it is a damn solid remake that doesn't get talked about enough. But I don't know, it's one of those movies. It's like one of my go-tos when I ain't feeling it. I ain't feeling it.
Feeling it, put it on.
Yes.
Feel good. Serotonin. And the bloodthirsty creatures.
Yeah, absolutely. We love bloodthirsty creatures.
Totally normal people here.
Yeah,
Of course.
of course.
Okay, so my number 5 was a journey. It was a self exploration within myself. For my number 5, I did kind of rank mine. I was trying to go down kind of nostalgia for me, right? I was like, okay, what are some 2000s era horror movies? Ones that don't necessarily pop up on best horror movies ever because they're not good, but I enjoy them. And something came up of it was From Hell, which was the Johnny Depp Jack the Ripper movie. And I was like, that's good, but we can do better. We can do Sleepy Hollow, because I really enjoy his
Ooh.
Sleepy Hollow. And then I thought, well, part of what I like about that is the environment, it's the setting. So let's go ahead and throw in Sweeney Todd. And I'm like, well, at that point, I just like Johnny Depp. So let's throw in Corpse Bride. I was like, wait a second, all 3 of those are directed by Tim Burton. So really, number 5, end of the day, number 5 comfort thing are Tim Burton movies. There's something about the aesthetic of them. It's like soft horror, right?
Yeah.
So it's something that does bring comfort. It's like Night Before Christmas, right? It's creepy. My poor parents were like, "What is wrong with my child for watching this in that time frame?" And to this day, if I can pop on, and I would say particularly more leaning towards the live action stuff,
Right.
um, less than the animated stuff. Not that that's bad. It's just the rabbit hole that went down started off with, particularly Sleepy Hollow. So, Tim Burton.
I like that.
Are you a Tim Burton fan?
My thing is I feel like I've seen a lot more Tim Burton films than I think that I have. I just don't recognize them as Tim Burton films, which seems ridiculous.
While Tim Burton might be iconic, it's also not so much like Wes Anderson, right? Who, like, you know a Wes Anderson movie when you see a Wes Anderson movie.
My next one is the 1980 Friday the 13th.
Ooh.
It's probably my favorite of the entire franchise just because it's the first one, and I have a very, with pretty much anything that I watch, I have a very weird like bond, for lack of a better word, with the
Okay.
first of a franchise or the first of a series.
Mm-hmm.
But I love the atmosphere of Friday the 13th, like the summer with like the lake and all the cabins, and it's at like a summer camp. I don't know what it is about just like the setting of it itself. It just makes me feel all like cozy. And typically I lean more towards movies that are set in fall or like Halloween time because that's my favorite time of the year. But there's something about that summer setting in Friday the 13th that I absolutely love, and it just makes me feel comfy. And I love like, that seeing all of the horror tropes that I've learned over the years like really be like on blast in that movie.
So, fun fact, I have never seen Friday the 13th. It's the only one of like the Holy Trinity, or Unholy Trinity in this case, that I haven't seen. I've seen a lot of Halloween. I've seen a lot of Nightmare on Elm Street. I've never seen a single Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th watch party, win.
When as soon as possible. uh, I originally had for my next one Ghost Ship.
Mm.
Salvage crew discovers a long-lost 1962 passenger ship floating lifeless in a remote region of the Bering Sea and soon notices that it's a long-dead inhabitant may still be on board. Ghosts, I love ghosts. Ships trapped in one space, great. And then there's like this weird kind of, not like saw torture, but there's a lot of stuff that's going on that's causing harm to people. Ghost Ship was really good, but that made me think of Mindhunters as well, which came out in 2004. And it's about a bunch of trainees in the FBI psychological profiling program who get thrown out to an island to practice and find a way off the island, but turns out there's actually someone murdering people on the island. So there is something about 2000s trapped on an area, large cast, 4 to 5 characters having to survive this incident. I also was thinking of 13 Ghosts when I was first trying to think of ghost ships. So again, there's something about that era of movies.
Yeah.
So I wish I could pick just one. I could just say Ghost Ship is what my original intent was. But whatever, I'm gonna go with a more broad, early 2000s ensemble horror.
That's kind of the vibe that I was trying to go for with narrowing it down, was like what, because anytime I think of comfort movies, obviously I have a couple older ones like Friday the 13th, but most of them come from like early 2000s or like mid 2000s compared to early 2000s and where we are now. Like you said, that whole era of horror films, just it's so nostalgic.
That's when we grew up, right? And that was probably pretty foundational for interest in horror and everything else. Because you go back, they're not good horror movies.
No.
They're very of the era.
Yeah. But there's something charming about that, I think. I don't know. I think it is just, again, like a nostalgia thing for me anyway. But hey, maybe one day we'll do our top 2000s horror films.
That'd be fun. So many of these I couldn't find on lists. I was trying to think like, God, I know there's movies that I are comforting to me, but they don't make a top 50 list. Oddly enough, Mindhunters 2004 did not make a top 50 horror film list.
Right.
You have to like find the right search thing to pop your memory. Like, oh yeah, One Missed Call, Shudder, etc., etc. I think the general consensus there was early 2000s movies.
My next one is one of my favorite movies of all time. It is Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
Yes, very good. I thought it's my list. I was like, she's got it covered. It's gonna be on her list.
It is absolutely on my list. This movie obviously came out in 2010, going back to like the early-ish 2000s horror films, but this one is a little bit different. This is a horror comedy that follows Tucker and Dale, obviously, and a bunch of college kids where just shit ensues, and it's phenomenal. It is hilarious, and it's, again, charming, and it follows like those horror tropes, and I just absolutely adore the hell out of this movie. Again, one of my favorite movies of all time. I am Dale. Hi, nice to meet you. I've never related to a character in a horror film more than I have related to Dale, so love that. But I also just got a new dog and I named him Tucker after this movie. I wanted to name him Dale, but he just didn't look like a Dale, so I went with Tucker. Sure. I got the Dale part covered, so he can be Tucker.
Oh, you guys can be a duo together.
Exactly.
That's right. Tyler Labine. I have such a crush on that man. He's Dale.
I fucking love Dale.
I think he's so cute, and he was in another show that I ended up watching for a while. It was Deadbeat. Which is like he was a medium, but didn't like really want to be a medium. Was kind of a goofball, doing his best trying to resolve ghost stuff. It's super cute. If you like Tucker and Dale, you should go watch Deadbeat. Very funny.
I will.
It was a Hulu original.
I love to see a goofball doing their best, because that is basically me in a nutshell. So being able to relate to that is just, it's just nice.
It's a good pick. I also have a horror comedy on my list.
What's yours? I have to know now.
Okay, so I have this right as my number 2, but it's 2/3 of the Cornetto trilogy. Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz. Because again, it kind of depends on the mood.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Love, 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 love Shaun of the Dead. Love, 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 love Hot Fuzz. Still both kind of horror genre-y, but not too different. But you got your zombies, and you
Right.
got like your murder mystery going down. Also, weird. Did you know Hot Fuzz is basically folk horror? Don't worry about it. I like what I
Oh
like.
my god. We need to add that to the bingo board.
Has she said folk horror? Check.
Silent Hill, check. Folklore,
Check.
check.
FNAF, check. That's it. That's almost a whole row, depending.
Amber likes something with a chainsaw in it, check. Amber likes Evil Dead, check.
Amber looks at slasher, check.
Oh no. We're
But
getting easier to read.
when these came out, they were a special treasure. Again, early 2000s, right? They're these movies that every time I watch them, I feel like I get a new joke. There's something that I missed before, or something that just it wasn't as funny before. Now is more funny. Things I've missed. I think they're just very clever written shows. I'm a huge fan of Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. Again, actors, if they're acting anything, I'll watch it just because they're in it, right?
Right.
I think they just do such a good job with all the work that they do. But when I'm feeling down and I need to laugh, but I still want to be a little creeped out, those are my two. Before anyone asks, if for those who know the Cornetto trilogy, the last one, Last Bar on Earth, Last Pub on Earth, it's the one where they're doing the bar crawl, and it's aliens. I don't do alien horror. It's not for me.
Anybody that's watching this that knows me personally also knows that I don't do alien horror. Not because it's not for me in the sense that I don't like it, but it's because I am a Weenie Hut Junior. And anything that has to do with aliens, I will hard pass on.
Really?
Yes.
Aliens no go for you, huh?
Yeah. You all blame my father for showing me Mars Attacks when I was 4 years old and having the
No.
same reoccurring nightmare about it until I was like 16. So now
Oh
aliens,
no.
no. Get it out of
That's so
my
funny.
face.
Aliens are like boring to me. That's how like
Interesting.
not for me it is. It's a whole thing that I do not care for. They never scare me. It's just a monster type that doesn't do anything for me. To each their own.
Um I think that's because I encompass all of your fear. So like you don't have to feel any of it. Like anybody that's not scared of
Kind
aliens,
of you.
you can thank me for that because I'm harboring all of it. All of the
You're
fear of
alien
aliens.
Jesus. You were holding all of our fear. Cool.
Okay, so I don't have to talk about aliens anymore.
Sure, absolutely.
My next pick again, early 2000s, and I'm going to get flamed for this one and I'm
Ooh.
ready for it. Rob Zombie's Halloween. There's just something weirdly comforting about his Halloween. Absolutely love. And again, like I said, I typically like movies that are centered around like fall time or Halloween, but there's something that about this movie that has just a little bit more like oomph. I think there's a lot more action and it's a lot less reserved in certain areas because obviously we're looking at 2007 as compared to when the original Halloween came out. And that's not to say I don't like the original Halloween because I absolutely love that movie. Obviously, I'm a horror fan. But comfort wise, I have to give it to Rob Zombie's Halloween.
Interesting. I remember watching it, and I wouldn't say like I hated it. I was fairly unimpressed by it. Like I don't know what I was expecting, but I was unimpressed by it. It did have
Yeah.
Sherry Moon in it though, and I do love Sherry Moon. So.
Yes. And honestly, I'm a huge fan of Scout Taylor Compton.
I'm not here to flame you. I'm sure someone will be mad at you
And
since it's
that's
the
okay.
internet. I really thought you were gonna say House of Thousand Corpses. I got really excited.
I thought about it. House of a Thousand Corpses is on my list of favorite movies for sure, but that movie brings me no comfort.
I love as soon as you started saying Rob Zombie and I heard huh, I'm like, oh no, why is House of a Thousand Corpses not on my list? Because as much as I do enjoy it, you're right, it's not a comfort film, but I do enjoy that. I enjoy that more than Devil's Rejects. I don't know how Devil's Rejects became more popular than House of a Thousand
I
Corpses.
1,000% echo that statement. It doesn't make sense to me.
Let's see. So going back for me then, number 3 on my list, although it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We're just doing things now. Conjuring, the first Conjuring specifically,
Ooh.
as a comfort film for me. Again, I was trying to think of stuff I like to watch when I'm stuck on the couch feeling gross, right? Conjuring for me is such a classic horror story, right? It's got your haunted house, it's got your ensemble, it's got those Amityville vibes, it has a happy ending. Like, it is everything I want from a haunted house story. And if I see it on, on a streaming service, I'm like, yeah, I'll sit down and watch it. It's just classic. It's classic. It's comforting. I know what's gonna happen. I think the jump scares are good. It's all just. I understand why there's a franchise that was based off of from this one success of this one movie.
Yeah.
Have the other ones been great? Not really. Really. I do really enjoy the first one.
That was another thing that I was like seriously contemplating putting on the list, but again, I think I need to see it a couple more times before it turns into a comfort movie for me, because it's been so long since I've seen it that anything that happens in it is going to scare me. Like, and that's the thing. It's like all of these movies are not scary to me at all. So that's why most of my list, if you haven't caught on yet, is slashers, because slashers don't scare me. And again, I am a Weenie Hut Jr. So I can't go for like the paranormal because they just scare me too bad for me to be comfortable watching them. But I love them. I love them. Like, I love The Conjuring is amazing, but I can't do it comfortably. Maybe next year, if we make another list like this, it'll be on there.
Updated.
Yeah,
revised.
updated comfort movies. My last one. This is one that kind of surprised me that ended up on my top 5 because it's a newer one. It's from 2021, but it is the Fear Street 1978, which is the second of the Fear Street trilogy adapted from the R.L. Stein stories. Again, it's the setting, like the summer. So the second one, the 1978, is the one where they're at the summer camp at Camp Nightwing, and it has Sadie Sink in it, and I absolutely love Sadie Sink, so I think that might have a little bit to do with it. But there's something about that second one. I think it's because it goes back to the whole Friday the 13th thing again, where it's like camp setting, summer, slasher, and that just, my little heart holds on to anything that's slasher for the most part. So no shock that it's another slasher.
I like that you are a summer camp horror. Like, I like that that's your thing. That's the thing that like really helps define or slasher horror specifically. But there's something about summer camp and slashers too.
I've never been to a summer camp before in my life, and that's probably why I like it so much, is because I can't correlate that to actual things that have happened to me.
I heard of a sleepaway camp for adults that was horror based, and like you signed off a thing that said like, oh yeah, you might be dragged out of your tent in the middle of the night, and like you're consenting to that by signing this waiver, and it's like a whole horror experience. It's not the terrible haunted house that was super popular.
Where do I sign?
Where do I sign?
Let's go. I'm
You
ready.
can do that. You can do that for both of us. Like hell, I don't even do haunted houses, like walk through haunted houses.
Oh no, I will not do a haunted house.
Oh, you'll be dragged out of your tent by a stranger. That's cool by you.
Yeah, that's cool. I've watched enough slasher movies to make my way and be the final girl. Okay, but a haunted house?
I believe you. Nah, man. My last one, I think I've mentioned once or twice in passing, but my last one is Oculus. I love this movie. Love it, love it, love it. It's one of my favorite movies to show to people. It's one of my favorite movies to put on. Again, comfort-wise, I know exactly what's going to happen. I like they take the scientific approach and trying to demolish this ghost that has way too much power, and that they don't succeed. It has a horrible ending. And, you know, why is that comforting? Don't ask. Don't ask. I just think that the story is so unique and well crafted, and from a scientific mindset, like, yeah, that's it makes sense that you'd set up all these precautions, and the mind twistiness that is like, is she biting an apple, is she biting a light bulb, the bouncing between age range or like time periods, is like they're adults and then suddenly they're kids. It's very House on the Haunted Hill, that show, where they did like one continuous shot but just for the whole movie. It was really, really well done, and I don't know, I love it. I love it probably most of all. If I could only pick one movie to be a comfort watch, it'd be Oculus.
Really?
Really, it's scary, right? But like,
I've seen that movie once, and the only reason I watched it is because it was a WWE Studios film. That's the only reason. And I remember liking it, but I also remember being a little like anxious watching it, which is fine. Like, I don't watch horror movies for the most part to just be like carefree other than obviously these ones, but there was something about that movie. I kind of got creeped out a little bit. I feel like I'm also going to get flamed for that, and everybody is going to come for me and try to revoke my horror fan card and be like,
For
bitch,
Oculus?
like,
For
why are you
Oculus
scared
and
of
all
that
movies?
shit?
Again, as someone who isn't a representative of Wing Hut Jr., one of my coworkers, I'm talking about you, yelled at me because they were catching up on From, and they're like, "You didn't tell me there was a jump scare," and I was like, "There was a jump scare." It didn't even register to me that like, oh, I guess some people would find that scary. You're right. You're absolutely right. My bad. Sorry, but I say like you're not wrong because that movie left me like I still to this day have a hard time looking in windows at night just in case I see any stranger with mercury eyes. Like, nah, I'm good. I don't need that in my life. However, that being said, I love that movie so, so much that, yeah, I can, if I'm sick, I'm going to grab a little blankie, I'm going to grab a stuffed animal and be like, this movie's terrifying. And, like, watch it in a fugue state. And it's fine. I don't know. I could not even describe anything beyond that. Feel movie, but I love it.
Thank you for validating my fear of this movie. So I'm going to use that validation as my horror fan card is safe. You cannot have
Hey,
it. Nobody touch it.
yeah.
It's mine.
I don't know what anyone could do for me to be like, oh, you can't boo a horror fan. I don't know. Why would it's fine? You're fine. You just said you prefer slashers because they're predictable.
Dude.
You don't mess with paranormal stuff. Oculus is like primo paranormal.
Yeah.
It makes sense. That would freak
Yeah.
me out.
And we talked about this a little bit in our horror influences. It took me a long time to like paranormal movies because of how scary they are for me. Obviously some are not, but generally speaking, but I love them now. As a person who's older, and before I was Weenie Hut General, now I'm just Weenie Hut Junior. So I can watch more of that stuff now and thoroughly enjoy the hell out of it. But if I'm sick and I'm in bed or I'm just not feeling like mentally at the top of my game, I can't be scared. So that's why. I mean, there I feel like there could be a couple on my like largely compiled list of comfort movies, but they're gonna be like bottom of the barrel paranormal, like Paranormal Activity or something, which like is a really good movie. That's not what I'm saying. Relax.
Something else.
It's a really good movie, but I've seen it so much that I know what to expect. I know what's going to happen, and it's not going to have the same effect. So it's a little bit more on the comforting side now than it would have been when I was watching it for the first few times.
That makes sense. I think it's interesting how you and I view like what will comfort us in those distressing times. Not so much sick, right? But again, depression spells, etc. That I tend to gravitate towards horror or high anxiety. I will gravitate towards horror because that gives me a place to put my fear and
Yeah.
to control the fear. So like I like stuff that is scary, so I can manage, right? I know weirdly I can manage myself better through a horror experience than day-to-day life where it just feels constant, right? It's
Right.
like when you have too much energy to go for a run. Some people do that, I hear. It's just you have this abundance of energy, or at least I do, and I'm like, oh, I don't know what to do with it. I don't know if something's scary, and I would rather have something that's going to spook me a little bit.
Right.
So that's also why I think I don't have a lot of horror like comfort like rewatch because I'm actually trying to find new stuff at that point, so that way I can feel scared or put some stuff out there.
Yeah. I think for me, because a lot of my negative feelings in life, some of it comes from myself, obviously. But what doesn't come from me usually comes directly from other people's.
And you're picking up your stress from external versus internal,
Right.
right?
And
Like
for the most part. There are some times where it is internal, and in other instances where it's like external stuff, it's like I am correlating all of the people that are dying in these horror movies, not to people, other people specifically, but to the feelings that they give me, right? So it's just like they're hacking down, like this person's pissed me off, they're hacking down that feeling of anger or stress because of something that's happening around me and like shit like that. So that's why I think like I gravitate towards slasher and stuff like that because for me, slasher is something that's a little bit closer to real life, from my own personal experience. I do like the idea of like placing your like negative feelings into something else that's more in a like a controlled environment. But for me, that's like the slasher aspect,
I like it. It's neat that humans cope differently.
right?
Cope more. I don't know. But yeah, I think it's just genuinely interesting how what we view as comfort and why we view it as comfort. But I think that concludes our list. I had a few more, but again, I think it's going to be for a different list, a different day. That didn't quite fit my comforts. If you enjoyed this, please be sure to like the video. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Hit the bell, the whole nine. Go on, take your time. Did it? Good. I'm watching. Watching you. You should also let us know in the comments what your favorite comfort horror movie is. Because we want to know. Because it could become one of our new comfort horror movies if we haven't heard of it before. Or maybe you know like a really sick, nostalgic 2000s horror movie that we didn't mention, because there are a lot. I'd also love to hear any of those that you have.
Yes, please.
But in the meanwhile, be sure to follow us on our Twitter at Down Home Horror. And should you need to find anyone in a pillow fort watching comfort horror movies, Amber, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Amber Blitz and also on Letterboxd at Amber Blitz. Remember, I am compiling a master list of all of my comfort horror movies on there.
Exciting. I can't wait to see it. And you can find me over on Twitter at Roll4Alex, where currently I'm doing a lot of actual play, tabletop role-playing game things, and lifetime streaming them. So if you want to know when I'm going live or what shows I'm going to be on next, that's where I update all of that. You can also find me on Twitch as I slow roll my way back into streaming at Roll4Alex with a 3 instead of an E. Don't ask questions you don't want answers to. It's just the way it is. But at this point, I should still be doing Amnesia: The Bunker. If you haven't watched our top 10 most influential horror content, I list Amnesia as my number one, so I'm a huge fan of the franchise. I'm very excited to play this newest entry into the series. We are also working on an Evil Dead project, and what we're going to be hoping for is some group participation. We've been talking about this the last few videos. Be sure to keep an eye out in our bio, but most importantly over on our Twitter at Down Home for any kind of updates and ways for you to participate as well, because we want to get a whole bunch of fans involved. I think that's it for promoting. So, until next time, be sure to check under your bed for monsters, because I can't.
And I won't.
Bye.
Bye.